On this week's episode of Motivational Minutes, NSLS President Neil Khaund shares the importance of learning from your mistakes.
I would love to know of an opportunity that maybe you had, you took it, didn't work out as planned. You gave it your shot, but you quote unquote failed, which is not a word we like to use, but it was not what you planned. How did you get over that situation and redeem yourself? Or did you just move on and say that wasn't for me? How'd you deal with it?
Okay, so absolutely, it's a great question, and I'll start with this: is that I make mistakes all the time, right? And so I don't want to say this, but I mean, as long as I'm right 51% of the time, we're in good shape. But overall, and I'll come back to kind of why mistakes are important, but I'll give a specific example, right? So in one of my first sales management roles, I had a team of like 8 sales reps, and they were reporting to me, and we were tasked with some pretty aggressive growth targets for the year. So I decided to like bring them in and let's do a strategy session, right? And so I spent like 3 weeks planning this strategy session. I spent a ton of time just kind of researching the market, right? Looking at our competitors, understanding our metrics, our dynamics, right? What about our product can we exploit to kind of really get this, to put together this sales strategy that can get us the 3 to 4x that we're looking for. Right. So I spent so much time on this. And then I brought everyone together. I flew them in. This was in Boston. So I brought everyone in. We're in this conference room. And, I proceeded to spend the next like 8 hours just walking them through the strategy, right? Here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here's how we're going to focus on. And I remember the meeting ended and no one seemed motivated. No one seemed engaged, right? I just remember being like, I spent so much time on this. And they were asking so many questions and it's like they were poking holes in the strategy, right? And I just sat there getting so irritated to the point where one of my reps, so we were taking a bathroom break, just kind of pulled me aside and he said, Neil, are you okay? Like, why are you so irritated, right? And I'm like, I spent so long on this strategy, right? I put this together. And this was, again, pretty early on in my career. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until after then, I felt like this was almost kind of an inflection point in my career, did I realize that, why did I do that, right? Like, I mean, and it was clear because up until then, and getting your first kind of management role, and I talked about this earlier, you feel like you have to be the smartest person in the room, right? Like, and especially for first-time leaders, it's the number one mistake we all make, right? Is like, oh, I got promoted into this role. I got to be the smartest person in the room. I got to lead this team. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what you do not want to do as a leader. You want to flip that script, right? What you really want to be doing is really motivating that team to be the best version of themselves, right? And the only way to do that is you give them the opportunity to work through the strategy, right? You give them the opportunity to be put in an uncomfortable position where they're going to learn and they're going to grow. Mm-hmm. That's what you have to do as a leader. And to me, and for me specifically, right, that was that inflection point in my career that I took so much from that experience in terms of realizing what not to do. And so I think that's an overall theme that every leader, every CEO, anyone actually, to consider, right, is, are you putting yourself in a position to learn, right? And that's why I kind of keep coming back to mistakes are a very good thing. They're a great thing. Mm-hmm. And if your team isn't making mistakes, then are you really putting them in a position where they're a bit uncomfortable, but they're going to learn? And we might get it wrong, but the kind of the calluses that they build are really going to help them over time. And it's something that I continue to profess with our team here at the NSLS is that, listen, let's really focus in on ways that, and I talk about this a lot, is this kind of growth mindset, right? And so a growth mindset is something I think every organization should have, but a growth mindset doesn't just mean how fast can you grow, how many more members and universities can you work with. It's more internal, right? It's more looking at every employee and saying, what are you doing to grow, right? Like, what is that project or that initiative or that task that is kind of stretching you a little bit? You might get it wrong, but you're definitely going to learn. And so that's something I always kind of come back to is, if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not learning. And that's a lost opportunity.
I love that. If you're not making mistakes, you're probably not learning. We need to put that on a t-shirt and have that on sale in the NSLS shop. Neil Khaund, President and CEO of the National Society of Leadership and Success, the NSLS. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate this conversation. Words of wisdom. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Corey, and appreciate you having me here.
Subscribe today for more inspiration on the go.